Thanks, Director Young. It's great to have you here. Last year, OMB estimated that by the latter part of the century, federal spending on crop insurance, coastal disasters, healthcare, and fire suppression would increase by between $26 and $134 billion per year due to climate change. Put in terms of 10-year budget windows, which is the way we put things in this committee, that would result in between $260 billion and $1.3 trillion in additional federal spending, with a middle case estimate of around $700 billion in additional spending. Now, that estimate does not include a variety of other federal programs that would be affected by climate change disasters, including defense spending and infrastructure, and it does not include the effect that we've been hearing about in this committee's hearings of what are called systemic risks, when there's a whole economic meltdown associated with things going wrong. For instance, when property values crash in coastal or wildfire areas because the risk is uninsurable and properties are therefore unmortgageable, or the widely reported carbon bubble risk. Is it fair to say that OMB's estimate is a lower bound estimate of the budgetary risk of climate change?
I agree with that assessment. Your assessment that the expenditure impacts we have are an undervalue, are underreported here. One thing we have to do a better job here and in the private sector is incorporate what climate damages will mean for our expenditures in the future. I just met with some economists and outside organizations who do economic forecasting, so we can share information and figure out how we accurately build this into our economic forecasts in this country and into our budgets.
Freddie Mac's chief economist has suggested that a coastal property values crash is likely as a result of the sea level rise and storm risk, and that could cascade out into the economy in the same way that the mortgage wreckage of 2008 cascaded across the economy. How would you describe how well the federal budget did as a result of the 2008 mortgage meltdown?
We saw the impact of that meltdown. I think most people would tell you the economic scarring from that took years to recover from. Some say, we still see some of the weaknesses that crisis brought to bear, and it gave us some lessons we learned in responding to the COVID pandemic and the economic outcome of that, which we learned to go big and address those problems head on, so we didn't see that scarring. But you're right, when you look at climate change and the potential for that level of crisis, if you compare it to the financial crisis of 2008, it could have sustained economic fallout for the United States and the rest of the global economy.
One of the things that my friend Kent Conrad used to point out when he sat in this chair years ago was that the only times we've successfully balanced the budget over the last 50 years have been when revenues accounted for 19 to 20% of GDP. If we go below that, we go into deficit, and if we are accruing revenues then at that level, then we've got the chance to have a solid budget. Under the President's budget, what share of GDP would revenue account for? And how does that compare to the last time we had a balanced budget during the Clinton administration?
So on average, the President's policies would bring in about 19.6% as a percent of GDP, and that's right in line where policies were, tax revenue was under President Clinton. As you mentioned, the last time we've seen budget surpluses. And
a time when the economy was doing very well.
Yeah, you also saw economic growth, and frankly, the investments we make here today is about growing the economy. We want more people in the workforce. Then you have to look at child care policy in this country. Can women and families enter into the workforce in a meaningful way? Well, most of them will tell you they need adequate child care in which to do that.
Last question. The President's Medicare tax proposal seems like it would both make our tax code fairer and extend Medicare solvency, which looks like a win-win to me. Could you comment on that?
Look, we will have disagreements about tax policy, I'm sure, a lot today, but the president's vision is clear here. There are billionaires, hundreds of millionaires in this country who pay a less effective tax rate than nurses, teachers, and firefighters. Some analysis has shown some billionaires have an effective tax rate of 8%. The president believes that is inherently unfair. He believes that the tax code needs to be changed to make sure that everyone pays their fair share in this country, not just working families. And we have several proposals in which to do that. Medicare, we have several proposals that would extend the Medicare Trust Fund by at least 25 years. The actuaries at CMS have put out a report, so don't take our word for it, that these policies would extend Medicare by one, making sure our net investment income tax, which was always meant to go into the Medicare Trust Fund, is actually going into that fund, making sure that those over $400,000 pay 1.2% more into Medicare, making sure that legal loopholes are closed so that people who are supposed to pay into Medicare actually pay into Medicare. The wealthiest have found loopholes. So those policies will extend the trust fund by at least 25 years.
Thank you very much. Ranking Member Grassley, then Senator Murray.